just have to introduce myself. So I'm Barry Scullion. I'm taking the module today on player development. So what does player development mean to you? For the person beside you for the next minute, what do you think of when you hear the word player development? Have a quick chat, 1 minute.
Trying to make a complete player.
What do you think of?
I just said that for me, the key thing with coaching under 15s is developing more than just a footballer, so trying to get the other areas of aspects of football, trying to get them to work together.
Good. 20 seconds. And back in. So just shout out anything you came up with there. What did you think?
Technique.
Technique. This group.
Improving.
Improving. Cool. One more.
Developing more than a footballer.
Perfect. So, learning objectives for the rest of this module. So we're going to talk about nature versus nurture. It's also known as genetics versus environment. You've got the New Zealand break it into 4 phases of player development. We'll cover those. Deliberate practice. What is deliberate practice? And investigating the coach's role within the process of player development.
Are we talking about jump players only now?
We'll go through it, yeah. So, question to speak within your groups. Is talent born or made? So that's that nature, nurture. So is it genetics or environment? Have a chat, 1 minute.
I think everyone does like strength, which I think science shows it's genetic, but
Thoughts? Both. What are your thoughts?
I was just saying, someone who's born talented, it's just a head start. It's you can certainly make a kid talented, or a kid can be made talented.
Cool. Get you to feed that back. 20 seconds. And back in the room again. Mike, what did you tell me there? What was your...
I said that players that are born talented, for me it's just a head start. I think that talent can definitely be developed and made.
Cool, nice. Anyone disagree or anything to add on to that?
Well, what do you mean by talent?
Well, we come up with the difference between the two of them is hard work.
Cool, perfect. So, quick little video. So just make sure you can hear it. Let me know if you can't hear it in the back, I'll turn it up. So it's a 4-minute video based on talent born or made. Hear that right?
For centuries, we've believed that being a success, being a champion, is about talent and about genetics. I became British table tennis #1 for the first time in January 1995, and that was a big shock to the sporting community in the UK. I was still very young, and not many people expected me to get to the top that soon. So I was suddenly on the receiving end of these huge eulogies about the very specific genetic inheritance, about having oodles of talent. But I'm not sure that this narrative, which typically defines the way we describe success, has any validity. I think that success has something to do with something completely different. I grew up on Silverdale Road in suburban Reading, a pretty nondescript street, except for one thing. It had tons of great paper tennis players. Me and my brother, Karen heavyweight Commonwealth champion Andy Rowan, one of the top players in the UK, Paul Trott, Keith Pollock. It was unbelievable. In fact, that tiny locale produced more great table tennis players in the 1980s than the rest of the nation combined. If you think that it's all about genetics, why would it be that just that one specific street was effective? Consider this too. Spartak Moscow, an impoverished tennis club on the outskirts of Russia's capital, produced more top 20 players on the female side of the tennis game than the whole of the United States combined. Once again, our inclination to think of success in terms of genetics has to be flawed. When you dig down into the lives of all great performers, whether it's David Beckham in football, Serena Williams, Roger Federer, myself in table tennis, or Picasso in the arts, what we have all had, the thing we've shared, is very specific, often unique opportunities to clock up lots of practice. In my case, that was brought about because Keith Childers, coach on Silverdale Road, was the best table tennis coach in the country. He provided access to the only 24-hour table tennis club in the south of England. Now you're going to say that you need both opportunity on the one hand and talent on the other, but that is not what the science is saying. The reason I say that genes are not that important is because over time through practice we utterly transform the people we are. It's like when we're practicing, we're downloading very specialised software that enables us to engage more successfully in whatever area we're practicing within. And you can actually see this in brain scanning. Certain areas of the brain get bigger. We develop new neural connections. Myelin, an insulating material, makes the signals travelling through the brain that much faster. And ultimately, when you look at the science, rather than our own implicit biases, you arrive at the conclusion that champions are not born, they're made.
So that's Matthew Said. That's a book Bounce he writes on this topic. So he touches on the environment there. So interestingly, in his book itself, so he's a table tennis player. He had the best coach in Great Britain was on that street. They developed lots of players. But he used to practice in his garage a lot. So his table was in the garage and it was quite small, him and his brother. So he had to practice up really close to the table. And then when he went into competitions, he had this developed a competitive edge because he played totally different to everyone else. And that was his environment that affected his development. This is Oisin, my little son. So based on the environment as well, it's like a little 10-second video. But he's been walking since 11 months and he's like kicking the ball from 12, 11. So he spots an airplane here and runs off. So we've got a little bit of work to do on him. But the environment for him is there's 6 footballs in the house, different sizes, around the sitting room. He's constantly surrounded by footballs. I'll bring him, he comes to some games. So straight away, he's already in that environment. And then he's got a parent who's an experienced coach, so that's going to accelerate his development. So the coach is a really important part to play in your actual development. On the other hand, you've got nature. So I'm not going to be a basketball player. If you look at, so nature's usually based around your height or your body shape can give you a competitive edge within the sport. So here we've got basketball. So really interesting statistic. In America, if you're over 7 foot tall, you have a 17% chance of playing professionally in the NBA. And if you compare that to football, not in relation to height or weight, the chances of making a professional, what do you think they are as a percentage?
0.2.
So to make a professional player, 0.0017. So that's quite a big stat, isn't it, just in terms of nature. So they get that advantage from there. And then this is Phelps. Here's another athlete who went on to achieve great things because of nature. So your wingspan, so that's your height from tip to tip, that's usually your height. So I'm about 6 foot, I think you mentioned there today. So he had an extra 3 inches on his wingspan. His flexibility, he could hyperextend his elbows, knees and ankles to get different angles. He had shorter legs and upper body trunk, and then he had the lowest ever lactate threshold for a swimmer. So he could get rid of all that waste and keep going without getting into pain. So straight away, for that sport, he's got a massive advantage in terms of nature. Other factors you need to think about. So there's disappointment and failure. You read lots of things about athletes who they're told you're not going to make it, and then they use that as a driving force. So here's Roy Keane, famous Irish footballer. He's quite small there. He's told you'll never make it, you're too small. You have Andy Robertson last year, plays Liverpool, won the Champions League, Premiership. He was at Celtic, told you're too small, you'll never make it as a professional. And then studies, there's a book called Mind Games, and studies suggest if you're a sibling, so a younger sibling, you gain an advantage. So here it says children are motivated to learn younger, so that's the first one, and then the other siblings are motivated to try and win, trying to better them. So we've got an example here of Serena and Venus, famous tennis players. So Serena's won 23 Grand Slams, and Venus has won 7. So straight away, and it's linked to like the Olympians. They did a study on Olympians, and most of the top Olympians were the youngest in that family. And then they're always trying to strive and beat their siblings growing up. And then you've got the relative age effect. So here is the Euro Championships. This is football. You can be affected by when you're born in the year. So what advantages do you think you can achieve? So here you have 57 players in that competition were born in January. Have a chat, 1 minute, in your groups. Why do you think? Yeah, I take some. Yeah.
And then obviously you get to say,
What's the thing?
Born in January, you'll have had around about, if you started playing at 5, you'll have about 7-8% more coaching sessions. People born in December, so you're like,
Yeah.
Could also be
Good.
just seeing the kids are still
15 seconds.
Break below, you're a big kid.
Good. Paul, what do you reckon?
We were saying something about the fact that you were born in the January, you passed that age group in January, you couldn't go down the train for the actual competition if you make the age group.
Yep. Anyone else anything to add? What you discussed in your groups?
So people born in January will have an advantage on people born in December because they've had like an extra 10 months of development, so physically and mentally as well.
Perfect.
So they'll be bigger and stronger and all of that.
Really good. Leads on to the next slide nicely. So here's Lukaku at 13. So look at the size of him. So physically, he's much more developed, and then mentally, potentially. But if you're physically developed, what might happen in his player development?
His touch turns to shit.
So his touch potentially, because if he's 6'3", playing under 13, and the coach doesn't identify it, the coach goes, put him as a striker, so he's going to run in behind and score me goals all day, and then he loses that concept of working on his technical part of his game. So
that development stage, he's had a massive growth spurt as his brain and his legs come back together and connected.
yeah, so there's lots of different factors, but as coaches, we need to identify that working with players. So if he's scored really good going forward and scoring goals or running behind, where might you play him, and what could you do to develop his first touch? Yeah, you could stick him in the middle. There's lots of different ways you could try and help his development as a player. He still went on to be a pro, but physically he was born at that time of year. He was much bigger than the rest of them, and that's why it leads into the relative age effect, because physically you get more experience. So say I'm 8 years old and I go for a trial and born in January, and the coach isn't aware of someone born in December, and they're in a group and it's all January and you've got 1 December in that group, not going to stand out. So he drops, doesn't make it, doesn't get to the next stage, doesn't get the better coaching, and straight away it's just like a massive knock-on effect for that player's development. So as coaches we need to recognise the player development. So linking into New Zealand framework, so that this is their player development model, and they break it into 4 phases, so 4 stages. Discovery phase is 4 to 8, skill acquisition 9 to 12, game training 13 to 19, and performance phase is 20 years plus. So a little bit of group work now. Group A and B, you're going to work on the discovery phase. What are some of the key considerations in this phase? And a little hint is in the name, discovery. This will come back up at the end. Group C and D, you're going to work together, so there's pen and paper here. You're going to present back to the group, so work together, write it on this page. Same with C and D. Skill acquisition, again, hint in the name. Group E and F, game training, so there's a sheet there with you, Paul. And G and H, performance phase, so these two groups. So there it is again. So you've got 5 minutes, have a chat. What are some of the key considerations? Yeah, just write it out. You're going to present the facts, so you need to stand up and hold it. Yeah, do it together. And write it on the page so then we can see. You're going to stand up and present it back. If you've any feedback, let me know then, because I have to review this myself.
Sorry?
I have to review this and send it in, so if you have any feedback, you can so I can put it in my review.
In terms of your role as a
Present.
changing
Yeah.
Do it as a
Fancy.
I'll just draw lines here.
It's just a bit worried standing in shorts. You might mark me there. I always had shorts on, but I thought you might say, oh, you need to be better dressed. It's so warm now.
So you're going to submit this one, you'll put it on.
Yeah, so I'm doing an online course. It's just called Train to Train. And we do open college in Ireland. And it's so it's similar. So you do this is one, then you have to design a 6-week program. You learn lesson plan, learning plan. And then you do lots of reflective journals and then do research in them. So the first one was theory, how you learn. The second was design, program, delivery. Seven parts. See what my feedback is. 2 minutes.
It's a 25
That doesn't matter, I cut these bits out. Because I have to get it done in 15 minutes.
So that's fine.
And I'll cut all this bits out.
So what is it, what kind of consideration?
1 minute.
I was more talking like
So you'll be presenting this, so make sure someone can see it when you hold it up.
Look, I think that parents should be allowed to have 10 meetings.
How are you going for time? Half. Okay, back we come. So we got A and B. Pick someone who's going to be comfortable standing up, so someone can hold it and someone can read it out.
So just to the side, the running was about.
Okay, listening in.
Right, so we had the discovery phase, so the very first young kids, like it says. So the key one, and probably something that can encompass everything, you could push the rest of these off. They've got to enjoy it, right? We want to build the love of the game as early as possible. So enjoyment's key for everything, every component that you run through. Under that though, so trying to allow them to experiment and try different things, because they're still learning how to even just move and do sort of basic stuff. And so there's got to be lots of opportunities to make mistakes, and lots of opportunities from a coaching perspective to instill in there from that age. Mistakes time. It's all G. So we've got to learn under a couple of times. Recognition, so lots of positive reinforcement, they kind of encompass the same sort of thing. From a coaching perspective, it's something that I definitely struggle with, having done seniors my whole life, is patience with the players. Make it social. Again, give them lots of opportunity to experiment and try different things. What we've got here, so it's playing more than sort of structured sessions. It's like Jenny was saying, or Jenny or Lisa was saying, it's more like kindy compared to school. You don't want to go into a kindergarten and see a whole bunch of tables and people learning off a whiteboard. It's learn and experiment through just play. Mixed, I'm assuming that's genders. Yeah. So mixed gender, all inclusive, everyone enjoy everything.
One more.
This one. First opportunity to start that nurture process from a sort of structured perspective. We don't have the opportunity to have a dad who coached over in the UK and stuff.
Good, thank you, well done. Round of applause. Anyone? Anything to add? Just think, anything to add to that?
Lots of exposure to football, as in like on telly, protesting games, that sort of stuff.
Cool. So this is New Zealand, so falling in love with the game, you had that the enjoyment, exciting, lots of touches on the ball, and engagement with the players. And there's lots more there, which is really good. Well done. Skill acquisition, you're up.
You go that side. I'm reading it out because I wrote it. We're doing the skill acquisition, and probably the most important ones for us was reinforcing the enjoyment, teamwork. We also brought up safe learning environment. I think it's really important that we balance our approach in that 9 to 12 years. It's not all about winning, and certainly the achievement may or may not be the same for the player as it is for the team, or the player as it is for the coach. And certainly around achieving goals could be anything from, a personal juggling record as opposed to a scoring of a goal in a game. Because often as coaches, we try and get a result, and the result for us is different to a centre back or a goalkeeper or something like that. Lots of positive reinforcement. Again, this age group still kids. So the more positive we are, the more they will absorb. Keeping sessions fun and positive. Lots and lots of touches on the ball.
Go one more.
And focused practices, I suppose, is another one from a coaching point of view.
Cool, well done, thank you. So New Zealand football, they reckon this is the golden age of learning, between 9 to 12. So you can really accelerate the player development within the technical part of the game. So you're focusing on developing football skill, but we want to try and do that within the context of the game. So really key, motor learning at age 9 to 12. Game training phase. You can do it from there, you don't have to come up, just do it from there. Yeah.
I can't read your hand. So a couple of things we looked at was a couple of things we looked at was the physical appearance and stature for the big age group. You got the gap between sort of 13 and 19-year-olds. We looked at it sort of the make or break phase for a lot of the kids. And go back to what you're saying, you're not big enough, you're not physically strong enough. That tends to be the age where coaches will go, nah, or go, yeah. So it's kind of a make or break phase for those. Probably going to that slightly better. They'll have a better game understanding at that point, going away from just getting involved and playing and getting lots of people. They should have a better understanding of the game, so you've got to pick that. Into fitness levels, it'd probably be more structured for these guys now as we're moving forward. Another one that we should have put in, maybe family life and personal circumstances are going to have a bit more of an influence over how they play, how they train. It's probably going to have a little bit more effect on their attitude and approaches and whatnot. And making sure they've got buy-in, that particular age group as well, ensuring that they are kept in line and you know, they understand why they're doing what they're doing and when they're doing it, and that it's fun for them as well. And that's pretty much of the majority, I think.
Perfect. Well done. Thank you. So you touched on team environment, more structure, so specific tasks. If you link it back to the practices to try and help the team perform, we've been working on. Then training should resemble the game. So you talked about that structure, and then bringing those core skills developed into more team environment. Well done. Performance phase.
Alright, we've only got 3. First one is you're judged on your results and your stats, so yeah, player performances and stuff like that. Not doing well with that. Second one is more of a player decision than an environment decision, so the guys that are there are more choosing to do it, they're not being like forced into anything, they actually want to be there. And lastly, early 20s, body is peaking, better for handling pressure, so like, I think, was it 25 would you say? 26 or something? Yeah. So 25 is when you peak, and 26 is when you're starting to go down, but you're like mentally and all that, your body can handle the pressure of...
Thank you. Well done. So trying to create more winning performances, opportunity for players to play at a higher level, at the highest level possible to them. And then it's perfecting those team tactics, solving football problems, which you've been doing on the course, and then analysis. And then probably key down here is longevity in the game of football. Like success is you want someone to play football for their life. Good work, well done. So one of the parts to the player development, the New Zealand football term ignition, so it's that fire in the belly, how do you get started? So this is, McIlroy was a huge Tiger Woods fan, just obsessed with him. And it's pretty cool, he ended up getting to play against him then as he grew older. There's loads of examples. So can you guess who that is? Mbappe, yeah, so Henri. There's loads of these examples with famous players, kids meeting them then going on to be top sports players. So that's the ignition for them. There's Foden in the back. You know what that is? Yeah. But, so quickly, for you, in your areas or regions, what could you do to help kids get more of a, ignite a passion for football? Any ideas? Shout them out. Go.
Start up a company that coaches kids in kindergartens.
Yeah, flyers to hand out after the course, yeah, nice. Anything else?
Having some of your players from the higher club sides come down and help coach the younger kids.
Yeah, a really good example. We used Aniela to come back into the FTC and she did a Q&A with the 12-year-olds. She was playing for, she used to play for 17s in New Zealand, and then I didn't realise how powerful that could be, because one of the parents emailed me that night and was like, oh my God, when my daughter came home, she was buzzing, she was like asking how I can get to that level, she was asking for scholarships to America. This is a 12-year-old, all because Aniela went in and spoke to him. I was like, never realised how powerful that could be, using people in your region to come in and speak to them, so that was a really cool example. Yeah. Yeah, 100% ball boys. Yeah, really good example. You've seen Foden there, and there's a few other ones at Chelsea as well. I've seen on when I was looking online. But cheerleaders, yeah. Wanganui FC. Huh?
Mackenzie Berry was a ball girl at the under-20 World Cup.
Was she?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And I got to play at one.
Yeah.
So now that it's been ignited, you have to go and act on it. So you're not going to get to the top level without practicing. So Gladwell wrote a book called Outliers. Anyone ever heard of that book? So he misinterpreted the research. So this is research by Ericsson. They're saying, Gladwell said if 10,000 hours practice of anything, you can become an expert at it. But originally the research was done by Ericsson violinists in Berlin, and they were saying it was actually an average. So by the time they got to 20, they were saying they're an expert at that. But his term went into like deliberate practice. So you can go out and practice 10,000 hours, but if you're not deliberate and focused on what you're doing, it's not going to be beneficial. So quality and quantity is really important for the deliberate practice. So it's not just a case of accumulating hours. The quality increases, will help development potential. And then there's also the dangers of trying to turn them into professionals at a really young age. So it leads to burnout, they lose the love of the game at an older age and drop out.
I like what Leon said last week, and the burnout is not the kids' problem, it's the coach problem, it's the coach fault, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we always say kids do too much, but it's just the coaches, the environment.
Yeah.
It's a good environment, you would never do too much.
Yeah, and it's recognising what environments they're in and see how much of you can actually help and support them. So we've got Phelps, back to Phelps. So I think it's 28 Olympic medals, but he had all those natural advantages, but he worked hard. He used to swim 50 miles a week, train twice a day, 6 hours a day, so 2-3 hours, 6 days a week, and that was for a long time. So they both play a role if you're developing elite world champion athletes or the amateur level. Us as coaches, we're striving to try and work with these types of players, but it might be limited opportunities for us to work with the likes of Mbappe. So what do you think are some of the key focuses for us as coaches to create for our players we work with? 1 minute, have a chat, person beside you. Another 4 minute video showing bits and bobs, so I don't know what's
No longer get it.
I don't know, I can't tell you who said it. But I know when I worked at Sport Wanganui,
yeah.
because we used to say, particularly in the schools environment, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Oh, yeah. 10 seconds. Sweet. What we got?
Safe learning environment.
Safe learning environment.
Keeping it fun, because when you get the particular, like the girls I've got now, they're older, boys have come into play, alcohol's come into play. So trying to encourage them that maybe don't go drinking on a Saturday because I want you fresh for tomorrow, but keeping them interested and invested in what we're doing.
Cool. Linked can become a role model as well, couldn't you? Good. Anything else? One more?
It's not about the coach, it's about the players.
Cool. So setting the player-centered environment is really important.
Yeah, understanding the player and what they need.
Cool. So get to know your player more. Perfect. So another little 4 minute video to show. This one's based around practice.
When you train these components in isolation, i.e. just the action or motor skill compared to when you combine them together, and what's the actual impact on the effectiveness of the skill and how it's executed, and the range of variability in the motor skill that's produced. So they set up 4 different conditions with senior futsal players. Condition 1, back and forward passing over 5 metres. Condition 2, diagonal passing over about 7 metres. Predetermined condition 1. Condition 3 is different in that they start to introduce the perceptual component as well, where the player can pass either back and forward or diagonally, but he had the choice and he can pass to a player that didn't have the ball. So he first can perceive all that and decide his option. Condition 4 created an extra option, but also pass laterally.
Thoughts? What do you think? If you link it back to last week when Matt did the passing practice, what would that be? Yeah, so it's generic and linked to each, so it was just action based, very little perception. And then we did the other one where now we're linking the two together. You've got the action and perception. The research says you could be wasting your time doing that. So think of it now. You've got a minute to have a chat. What would purposeful practice look like to you, considering what we just watched? Have a chat in your groups, 1 minute.
Do you have like a goal?
I haven't seen all the science behind his statement of it being a waste of time learning the basics. I haven't seen all the science behind it, so I don't know. Because I've tried. The main one was coaching. I went over to the tower and there were some girls there that had to choose a sport, so they chose football. So we tried, and there were some girls that did play football, and then I did end up splitting them off into groups, some playing games, and some just starting off with passing to each other, but then kind of like passing to each other, and then quickly trying to pass over bigger distances in threes and choosing who to. And then that got them to be able to be involved in the other games. They had to be in the other games.
You give that example to the group?
Yep.
10 seconds. Back in, so a good example at the back there from Adam. Adam, can you let everyone know what the conversation was there?
We were discussing I don't know how good the science is behind that point, because my experience of coaching a girls' school team was something could force them to, well, they had to choose a sport, so they chose football because they thought it would be easy. Because it wasn't for right? The trainings were easy. But so I ended up splitting them into two groups of different skill levels and working on real basics of how do you stand and plant the foot when you're going to pass the ball. Because some of them had to pick the ball before. And then they quickly caught up through those simple technique things. They quickly caught up to be able to join into the other ones and take part rather than standing there and not wanting to do it. So I think a combination, I'd do a combination of both would be.
What could you adapt so there's more perception, but still they get lots of repetition?
Well, I feel that quite quickly from just passing to each other to kind of having a really very close rondo with those players. So they were all in the same environment to make mistakes. And the ones who could play weren't rolling their eyes and not passing to them. But I did start off with that basic thing. Maybe I could have started off with the little group games.
It's consideration, yeah. Anyone anything to add?
I've kind of had the same thing where I've done senior men's teams where you've got dudes that have never played a sport before and just want to get out and do something social. And yeah, trying, like, even that very first passing drill that we did under yourself and Leon as comparison to Matt's initial one, a lot of those guys as players meant to be in that peak phase, it wouldn't have worked. And potentially they would have got frustrated that they weren't, making passes and things like that because they never had any, they haven't come through the system that we're, the New Zealand football framework that we're working off in.
Yeah.
But aren't you giving them that opportunity to make those mistakes so then you can coach them? You have two static lines where you're just passing there and back. Yes, you can work on this way over this way, but if they're moving and making mistakes, it gives you more opportunity to step in and coach those people.
Yeah, and I think if you link it back to what it said there, like the skill acquisition phase, 9 to 12, that's where most of the development is done, your technique. So if you're trying to train a senior man at 25 and he hasn't got that technical base foundation, you're not going to improve much. So by age 14, 15, 70 to 80% of your technical development is done. You're not going to improve them that much. You can do it, but it's like a small improvement over that time. So that's why it's really important in skill acquisition phase. We nail it there and just before it is really important. Nice? characteristics of a top coach. What do you think?
I concur.
Scottish. Yeah, Scots are doing well.
To be able to build relationships.
Yeah,
A good communicator.
yeah. So they reckon they're usually softly spoken, and they're not loud and they're quiet. A lot of top coaches. So where you have this picture where you're roaring on the sideline, Klopp is a good example. Yeah. So the research suggests. Anything else?
Role model?
Hmm.
Role model?
Role model. Yeah.
Very focused on the supporting environment, making sure everything's right.
Yeah, the different elements of the sport.
They'll often come through a high level system, like through that full development process.
Mourinho never played at high level. There's some top coaches that haven't played at high level.
Is there a passion for it?
Yeah,
Passion for the sport?
perfect. So if you think about the coaches, usually have just as much of a passion as the players. So these are what some of the highlights. So they put themselves in uncomfortable situations. You're all doing that this week, getting out there, coaching in front of people, being videoed, mic'd up. That's how the brain grows, they reckon. They put in to really try and stretch yourself all the time. Stop reading and start doing. So two-thirds is the rule. You do practice or plan for one and then 2/3 of doing it. Commit to the long term. So I think Leon has spoke a few times about now when you finish the course, you get back into life. So make sure you try and commit. I'm going to get this completed in 24 months. So you commit to finishing the process and getting your qualification. Finding a role model. So watching people in your region or online. We spoke about all the top level coaches. That could be a powerful role model to help your development. And keep a notebook. There's a documentary on Netflix. Has anyone seen it recently about following different coaches from different sports? I can't remember, is it called something along the Notebook or something? It's like 30 or 45 minute sessions. Brilliant, so good. It's got like tennis, coach, football. It links it through. So a lot of the time they're saying they keep everything. So I'm really guilty of I'll plan a session a day or two before, write it down. That's our football problem, and then I don't know where that goes. So it's really good to keep track because then you can flick back to go, oh, I've covered this before, rather than have to go and plan again. And here we've got the development, linking it together. So you've got the ignition, trying to get that player investment. Expert coaching plays a big part in development. If you get those opportunities, then the purposeful practice will lead to player development and practice play. Done. So quickly have a read. So group A and B, what's the most memorable thing you've taken from this presentation? Have a think. C and D, what can you take away and try and put into practice? E and F, can you name the 4 stages of the New Zealand development model? Bonus points for adding the ages. G and H, think of a question to ask in relation to the presentation. Got it? 1 minute. I'll go back. Yeah. The playbook.
From January to December.
Is it
Is
what?
that the January to December? Is that male based?
You can ask the question when we get started.
Who are we asking?
Easy one, an easy one.
We got it.
One could be Jackson, the other could be Tom.
You've got 1 minute.
They got a good coach.
Right, we're good to go. Ready to go? Who's speaking? You? Okay, back in the room. We can start with A and B. What were your thoughts?
For me, it was that most of the skill acquisition is done from 9 to 12.
Yeah, cool. Anyone else in the group anything to add?
I did have a question, was the January to December, how different that is from males versus females?
So the relative age effect? Yeah, so it's the same, and it's in nearly all sports. So it was discovered in Canada. There was a man was taking a team, and his wife was doing the register, the list of kids, and she noticed, she's like, oh my god, like 80% of your team are born this time of year, and then he started to go and started researching, and then he started looking at other sports, and they're like, oh, it's quite consistent. C and D?
Well, what we come up with was the picture that was put up about the 4 different ways of doing the passing practice, about how we could possibly change the physical constraints of the session to allow for smaller players or let the younger players to achieve the same outcomes as older or better players without having to go to a straight line.
Yeah, cool. Nice. My son was born in October. E and F?
The discovery phase, which is 48, skill acquisition phase, 9 to 12, game training phase, 13 to 19 plus, and performance phase, 20 plus.
Nice. Nice work. Think of a question to ask. So what have we got?
We wanted to know what your thoughts on the nature versus nurture is.
Great question. Yeah. Size the same. I think both have a part to play. Yeah. That's us done. So just a summary: nature versus nurture. The 4 phases which you got. Well done. Deliberate practice is really important for player development, and the coach has a crucial role to play in terms of player development. Done. Thank you. And any feedback in general for me, because I have to do a review of that. So have a chat 1 minute. Was I speaking too quick? Was the content good? So that'll help my development. So have a chat 1 minute. Any feedback from me?